So, hi everyone, welcome to Lectora. Hello, LifeEdge. Because life doesn't have to be mediocre, and we are here with Dr. Susan Nash. I haven't seen you in ages, Susan.
It's great to be here.
We missed you.
Thank you.
And she's back. So
Yes.
she is in her office in University of Oklahoma?
No, I'm at the American Association of Petroleum Geologists
Oh, that
in
office.
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yep, sorry. Her other job.
Real job.
Her real job.
I just sort of sometimes.
Susan is a very busy person. So we are streaming right now. We're just going through the shots real quick so we make sure that everything is working correctly and everybody's got the lower thirds right. So I'm going to switch to your shot again. Make sure we got the lower third right there. Yep. And okay, we're good there. So are you in Brooklyn, Abbas?
Yes.
You are? Okay. How should I say Brooklyn? You're in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I grew up in New York.
Get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, a cup of coffee.
Coffee.
Yeah.
I used to live actually in Guilderland, but that's between Albany and Schenectady.
That's very good. Were you raised from that area, or were you raised in upstate New York?
No, but I have family in Vermont, so it was close.
Oh, very cool.
And I was brought up in Queens, New York.
Oh,
Nice.
I grew up from about the age of 3 to about 14. Then we moved to California.
Which borough in Queens?
I was in, let's see, what area was it? It was near Flushing at one point, off the Van Wyck.
Rego Park?
Close to that. It was off the Van Wyck Expressway, Queensboro Avenue and Van Wyck Expressway. Not too far from the airport back then. And then before that in Jackson Heights.
Okay.
I love Jackson Heights. So much food.
I do great restaurants.
Now, I heard, when we were there, it wasn't, but now it's a pretty large Indian population there.
It's got everything.
It's got everything now.
It has
Okay.
everything, yeah.
Because when we were there, it was Italian mostly, a lot of Italians. Then they started getting kind of more Puerto Ricans, and the food started changing. And then, of course, I left. This is 40-something years ago, so it's been a long time. But I heard, it's got a little bit of everything right now. I remember we were driving back to the airport, and I didn't recognize a lot of it. It was starting to look very different. And I guess where the expo was, the World's Fair, that they changed that totally. I didn't recognize. I think they had the geodesic dome, but that was about it.
Yeah, it's very hard to go about Jackson Heights now and not stop at a restaurant or a food cart and
really
purchase.
It's good.
Yeah, it's very good.
I should do that. I'd probably get lost today. It's been so long. I've even walked that area. We used to walk everywhere. It was fun. I go to Manhattan a lot because we have one client in Stamford, Connecticut, and then we always go into New York. And I like gear, photography, video. So we haven't been to B&H yet. I want to go to B&H Video. That's like
that's a giant audio video.
It's Mecca for geeks.
On the west side, right?
Yeah, I call it Mecca for geeks. That's us.
Yeah.
But it should be fun. One day we're going to get there. So let's see. So we're going to start on this shot. All right. So I think we're ready. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to start on this shot. Let me change over to one thing. Let me preview our intro. And okay. So I am going to start the show recording in 3, 2, and 1. Hi, everyone. Welcome to LifeEdge, because life, it just doesn't have to be that mediocre. And joining me is someone very non-mediocre, somebody who's a pleasure to be with. She's brilliant. Dr. Susan Nash. Hey, Susan, how are you?
It's great to be here, and thank you. You're so flattering, as always.
No. All well-deserved, and I've missed you. We haven't been on the air in probably 5 months.
I know, it's been crazy.
It's good. A lot of people thought we quit the show, and we did a little quick show explaining that, no, we hadn't quit it, that you needed some time off and got some things together, and you're back. So we're more than glad to see you again. So it's our pleasure. So let's run our intro, and then we have a great guest today. I'll have you introduce.
Perfect.
Here we go. And Susan, would you like to do the intro and honors?
Absolutely. We have a great guest, Abbas Manjee. He's Chief Academic Officer of Kiddom. Kiddom is an educational application that's really quite unique, and I'm eager to ask Abbas all kinds of questions.
Well, welcome, Abbas. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Oh, our pleasure is ours, and you're in the position of importance, right in the middle, so we can keep an eye on you here.
I'm not used to this feeling.
So tell us a little bit about Kiddom. It sounds really interesting.
Sure, yeah. So Kiddom is a free personalized learning platform. We basically call it the easiest way for teachers to plan, assess, and analyze learning. And the beauty of this is that it's totally free. Teachers are able to design personalized curriculum. They're able to assess their students using a bank of standards-aligned content, and then they're able to use beautiful, actionable reports to pivot and tailor instruction based on student data. And having been in the classroom, I used to teach high school math in New York City, I can tell you that this is a tool that I wish I had when I was actually teaching.
So where did you come up with the curriculum? I think it sounds absolutely wonderful. I just was wondering where you came up with the instructional content.
Yeah, so actually what's really interesting is that we don't make any of the instructional content, right? So as a teacher, you're constantly you're reinventing the wheel all the time, right? So when I was teaching math, and let's say, for example, I was teaching solving linear equations, there were so many teachers probably at the same time teaching that very same topic and making worksheets and resources for that very same topic. So what we've done is actually added a content library on top of our gradebook, where teachers can actually find this pre-made content aligned to standards and assign it to students based on, if the student needs remediation, or if the student needs exploration material, or if the teacher just doesn't want to make content that they've already made before for, let's say, students who are absent. So we use content providers like CK12, Khan Academy, Common Lit, basically all the platforms. There's so many of these tools out there, and it's so hard to keep track of them. What we've done is actually organize them by standard and by content and type to allow teachers to find exactly what they're looking for right when they need it.
Well, I have to say I'm a big fan of Khan Academy, and especially their economics and microeconomics, macroeconomics. So they're just great, and I'm glad to hear that you're incorporating those things. My question is, though, how do you know that you're aligned to standards?
Yeah, absolutely. So what the platform, when we connect with partners like Khan and CK12, they actually have on their database any kind of content that you can take. They actually have standards aligned in their database. And what we do is we just pluck it, and then we allow teachers to then either accept the standards that Khan has aligned for you, or to append standards of your own. So let's say Khan Academy has aligned something to a specific, social studies standard. If I'm a teacher and I think that's great, but I don't think it really aligns, that teacher can actually choose to remove that standard and append something that they think is actually more appropriate.
Can they create little practice tests?
Yeah, so we integrate with Google Drive. So if you wanted to make your own content, you don't have to rely on third-party material. We designed Kiddom to be very flexible and nimble. So if you're a teacher who doesn't really want to use third-party material, you want to make your own, you can feel free to go ahead and do that. We integrate with Google Drive, so if you make content and quizzes and tests and essay prompts using Google Docs, you can actually share those Google Docs directly to your students using Kiddom. And what Kiddom will do is they'll make our platform will make a copy of that document for every student you assign it to, so that you don't have like 30 kids trying to manipulate one document.
So are you considered like a learning portal for different content? So in essence, it sounds like you aggregate content. They can modify the content. So are you the portal, a content management system, or a learning management, or a combination of all?
Well, don't get me started on what I think about learning management systems. I don't really think learning management systems, first of all, they're very bulky and clunky, and they tend to keep you in a very narrow scope. At Kiddom, we actively try to get teachers to use other tools, and then we'll aggregate all the data and have you come back to our analytics. Right. So
Okay.
you can think of us as an education tool belt, really,
Yep.
because you don't have to use all the tools that we provide, but when you need something, you can easily access it. So I wouldn't say we're a portal. I wouldn't say we're an LMS system. I guess we'll just let the pundits come up with another acronym to describe us.
That's good. Well, you know what? I'm glad you're not on LMS because that's always sad. So I don't disagree with you there. But it does sound like you have elements of a content management system plus the aggregation of all the different content. And it sounds like a great solution in the way you aggregate all of that and then give them the flexibility to use what they want, which is nice.
Precisely.
I'm interested in your comments about learning management systems. I've noticed that they've just become bulkier and bulkier, and then they don't really have the ability to incorporate, say, well, some of them do a little bit, like Canvas can incorporate Google Drive and Big Blue Button, but they're just so bound by their own kind of rigid infrastructure. I was wondering, what do you think is the future of learning management systems, and where do you think they will actually go?
I think that's a great question, first of all. I don't know what the future of learning management systems is because they're so tied to higher education. I think somehow the future of K-12 education technology might actually dictate what higher education tends to then choose. I think we're coming at a place right now where student ownership, student choice, student voice is becoming very important. And I think giving students the flexibility that they need to work on their own terms is very important. And I think LMSs right now tend to struggle in this area because it's very, very teacher-centric. And, Kiddom is very young. We're a very small team. A lot of us are actually former educators. We're just getting started with this, and we can't wait to reveal all the ideas that we have coming up in promoting student choice and voice with our platform.
Well, in philosophically thinking, Moodle claims that they're all about collaboration and that they incorporate strategies for people to learn from each other and constructivist theories, etc. And I think there's a lot to that, and I was wondering how Kiddom can incorporate collaborative learning.
Absolutely. So you're actually about to make me reveal some of our upcoming features. But so right now, Kiddom at this very moment is it's a very individual teacher tool. But what we're about to release is the ability for teachers to actually collaborate with each other. We actually have a lot of teachers who are co-teachers on our platform, but they're using it under one single login. And what we're going to do is actually turn Kiddom into almost like a Google Docs, where you can share your class with other teachers in your community, and then you can give them editing privileges to be co-teachers. But also, think about it this way. If you share your classes with your school community, then we'll design a aggregated view where school community members, including school leaders and district administration, can come together and take action on the aggregated data that comes from this aggregated model that we've put together from a variety of different classrooms across one school community. And then on top of that, what we want to do is actually provide students the ability to collaborate on assignments and projects. So there's just a lot done for us to do, and we're really excited about finally giving true spotlight to this idea that it takes a village to raise a child.
Well, and then collaborating is a really great place to start. Having, say, the challenge to put together something that uploaded a project that 5 or 6 people have worked on in Google Docs, and then they upload it. So you can do collaboration now. It sounds like it's just not. There's not just like a little part in Kiddom that says, here's your collaboration sandbox.
Yeah, I think so. We want to definitely stay away from telling people what to do, because I think generally education technology has left a very bad taste in everyone's mouth about telling people what to do. We want to provide options for teachers and learners, and what how you use those tools and options, that's great. We want to learn more about how you use them and build on those rather than prescribe and tell you what to do.
It's really interesting, and I also wonder about like the future. I mean, what do you see that you're going to do? Like, how do you see yourself evolving to meet future needs?
That's a great question. I think we have to figure out a way to help teachers from different parts of the country use the same resources, right? So let's say, for example, I'm a teacher in Texas, and I'm bound by the TEKS standards, right? Texas has its own standards group. They're not Common Core. Unfortunately, a lot of education technology tools are aligned to Common Core. So sometimes if you live in a state that doesn't prescribe Common Core, you're kind of left with this, feeling of helplessness, like, oh man, like I don't really know if I can use this. It's not aligned to my state standards. How can I use it? Do I have to go through the exercise of finding things that may align? I don't know. Is my principal going to be okay with it? So I think our next challenge is to come up with a universal language to unify the standards across the United States, and then let's talk about connecting teachers and learners around the world.
Would that open it up for like homeschool teachers?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we actually have a lot of homeschool teachers using our platform, and that's because you can not only add in standards from across different states, but you can also write your own and track your own. So this is great for special ed teachers as well who are tracking IEP goals, but also if you have your own standards and competencies that you want to add and track, you can actually do that on Kiddom.
Oh, that's interesting. So, Rick, how does this tie in with your philosophy of teaching and learning?
I like the flexibility of it, and one of the things I've been reading a lot about the Khan Academy, and I think it's rather clever because what they're saying is that when the kids are left to a certain point to help each other, they're actually much more successful. And it's real interesting that the straight A students, who usually tend to be pretty solitary, they do their own thing, actually decline in that environment, and the supposedly less academic students actually wind up getting very good grades as well. And I find that really interesting, how that happens and how kids can help each other, and in their own way they naturally collaborate.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say what is the best way to learn as a generalized statement. I think everyone learns differently, and I think when you break down specific types of content and media, even that is different across different people, right? And so what we want to do is help teachers and learners unlock their full potential by giving access to a unique set of tools that will optimize, the process of learning.
Now, Susan, you asked the question. When I grew up, I went to originally public school in New York and then to a Catholic school. My parents said, no, you're not learning enough, you're going to Catholic school. I was like, oh no. And it was brutal. I mean, they were tough. I mean, they would whack you. You got out of line. There were 50 boys in one class, and then they had the other building was a girls' side, and believe me, they were disciplinarians. But when we graduated in 8th grade from elementary school, not every, but a lot of us were reading at senior and college and above levels, whereas the public school in New York was, in those days, reading at about a 3rd grade level. And you went, wow. So I don't know what the biggest differentiator was, other than you didn't read, you got whacked. So it's like, we will read. But you're right, there's so many different ways of learning and so many ways of teaching people. I think, if we're going to start to get into theory of education, kids learn a little bit differently from adults, but I think classes are too long for kids and they're too long for adults. It should be shorter by probably half, if not, they say adults learn very well in 10 to 15 minute pieces, and then they lose attention. They're into other things, especially if they've got responsibilities. I think kids do the same. Now, I lived overseas for a while, and school was different there. In, for example, elementary school, they would take 10 solids every semester, and they were only 30-minute classes. And I thought that was really fascinating. They had a certain amount of homework, maybe 1 to 3 hours, depending on the subjects in the school, but very, very short compared to our almost 1 hour sessions when we were in school. And I liked the 30 minutes. I used to like the quarter system better than the semester. Semesters were torture to me. I was bored, especially if you had a bad teacher. That's 20 weeks of boredom. And I wasn't ADHD or anything. I just got bored because they were going slowly. They always went to the lowest common denominator, which may not be that fast. And if you could do it, it was boring because you couldn't move ahead because they wouldn't let you. So I like quick. I used to take every summer school class I could take in the physics and chemistry because they were fast. 6 weeks, you got a lot done. That was 20 weeks compressed into 6. That was good. I like that. What do you think, Susan?
Well, it's amazing how many universities have 8-week courses now, and that's kind of typical. And people will take 2 courses instead of 4, but they'll still finish 4 in a semester. So I think it helps people focus. Now, in terms of how long the classes are in attention span, I think it's a great idea. It just depends on how much is connecting an application and how much is sort of just standing and delivering content. And I remember in Latin America, it seemed great. The classes, I think they started like at 7 and then they ended at noon. That seemed kind of good.
In some places, yeah. Yeah, and the kids then, I went off to, and they had another thing that we don't really have that much. They had different kinds of schools. I know in Europe they do this. You have technical schools, business schools. This is in high school, pretty much. You've got the general arts schools, so maybe a more of a focus on different kinds of things. So the kids are forced into making decisions a little bit quicker, whereas here we don't make a lot of decisions until who knows when. I'm not sure if that's good for the kid or not, but they seem to do okay with a little more rigor as far as what they do. So it's just interesting. There's so many different ways to teach, and for the most part, I think we've all been sort of taught more in the French version of teaching from probably the 1800s on, which is a lot of memorization, a lot of you sit, you learn, you shut up, and you do. And it was effective to a point, but it wasn't probably the most effective for smarter students or students that could go beyond that. And I think anybody who's ever been smart in a classroom and got held back to the lowest common denominator usually was bored. I think that just happens to everyone. What do you think, Abbas?
Well, I have a lot of opinions here. So,
that's good. That's good.
I actually just I want to first ask you a question, Rick. When you mentioned that you were moved or transferred to the Catholic school, was that your parents' decision?
That was their decision.
Right. So I think that's where we're seeing a sort of sensitive, hot topic happening, right? So if you have the luxury of parents who are willing to pluck you out of public school and move you into a place where they know, you're going to get more attention, or whatever. More attention might mean personalized instruction, or it might mean a whack. But the fact of the matter is, you have someone looking out for you to take care of you, and I think a lot of parents might struggle who live in public, who send their kids to public school environments, right? I mean, some of these, like charter schools, for example, have stipulations where a parent must come X amount of times to the school to meet with teachers and administrators, otherwise the kid gets removed, right? And so this is how charter schools are able to keep up their numbers, because they can remove students, whereas public schools cannot. I will say that in America, or not even in America, but just around the world, I think school is the only place where your subjects are sort of siloed, right? Like I can't think of a time where I'm just doing math, or where I'm just doing ELA, or I'm just doing civics. I think a lot of the world is interdisciplinary. I think Finland's moving there. They've removed subjects from some of their grades. I think that's the way to do it. I think America has a long way to go, but I think context is key. We can't just look at Finland and go, oh, why can't we just be like them? Well, because we have so much history and structural racism and all these other things to deal with. So I want to make sure that people don't look out to these other places and just point and say, why don't we just replicate that, without taking into account all the history that we have in this country.
Sure. And it's interesting because when you talk about subjects, And you said you were a high school math teacher. I remember as a kid, I hated math. And it wasn't because I hated math. I didn't know I could like it. We had, a lot of times, the math teachers we had really didn't understand math. So there was nothing, they didn't teach it as something interesting or anything that was relevant or in context. I got into college, and of course I was an engineering major in college, in my first, one of my first majors there. And I didn't graduate in engineering, but I moved on to business administration and IT work. It fit better for me. But when I was in college, the math was, I went, oh my gosh, I am so unprepared for doing math correctly because we were never taught correctly. But I found in this library, in the college library, I discovered the math section. And then I started reading books on the theory of math, the philosophy of math, and I went, ooh, this is actually pretty fun and pretty interesting. And then that actually helped my math get better because now I kind of understood why we were doing this. And then I had a couple of teachers that actually made it more practical. So the math made sense, and I had a little bit of theory now background. And so I think I was pretty typical of most of the kids who went to school, didn't like math because I didn't get math. And once you start getting something, what a difference it makes. Night and day. What was your experience as a math teacher dealing with students who probably a lot of them came woefully unprepared?
Yes. So I taught at a school, an alternative high school, serving at-risk youth who are overage, so 17 to 21-year-olds coming out of incarcerated backgrounds or shelter homes. And I have to say, many of them performed very well given how far behind they were because I had an investment banking background before, and so I understood that context is key, right? I'm not going to teach you how to solve a linear equation unless there's a problem you can connect with, right? So if I propose a problem to you with, okay, well, we're considering two phone plans, Sprint versus, Verizon, which one's cheaper? And we don't even give context to math yet. We're not even talking about math. We're just talking about something real life, right? And then we start breaking that down and we start, naming the variables, and we start talking about, wait, we could actually solve this. How do we solve this? And all of a sudden it becomes, I'm still trying to solve this problem of which plan is cheaper, not trying to solve for X. And I think that's where we really need to fix that.
See, I would have loved you as a math teacher. You would have got me interested because I would have said, oh, that makes sense. It would have brought it to life. Whereas, you go through 8 years of math in elementary school, and by the time you're done, your basic math. But when you get into algebra and geometry and trig, it's a little bit different. And I was good in algebra. I wasn't good in geometry, which is funny because now I kind of understand geometry going, it's actually pretty cool. But at the time, it was like, oh my God, geometry, oh no, this is bad. And so, but again, and of course, I was a science fiction lover. So a lot of that was based on math. So I go, I need to learn a little bit more about math to understand what he's talking about in these equations. So it, like you said, it's all about the relevance, but you're solving problems, which makes sense. Susan.
Well, and I agree. Yes, and I think that situated learning is where it's about, and then touching with prior knowledge and incorporating experiential as much as you can. And this is where I think I like Kiddom because it's extremely pragmatic, given the exigencies of the times, where it's all outcomes based and performance based, and at least it can at least help fast track teachers getting results, so that they can be a little bit more relaxed and relieved, so they can do some of the things that make the connections.
And Abbas, what kind of feedback do you get from teachers who are getting into this right now? Into Kiddom.
A lot of good, actually. So here's why I'm really proud of this. So when you sign up for Kiddom and you have a question, or you need guidance, or you need some kind of professional development support, there's a little chat box in the bottom right window of your browser, and you can easily chat any team member. So whenever you chat and you say hi, everyone's phone goes off on the team, and we're very, very keen on listening to what our users have to say, because I think, again, having the experience of being a teacher and worked and used education technology, typically education technology companies come in, they come to your school, they give you 1 day of PD, they help you learn the tool, and then they're, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, they're gone. We actively want to listen to our teachers to figure out, well, what do we build next? So I'll give you an example. A lot of education technology is focused on assessment right now, and that's, I have problems with that too, because there's a lot of, that might be tied to standardized testing. But how do you really build assessment without thinking about curriculum, right? Isn't curriculum the sort of sweet spot? Isn't that where the emotional work comes in? And I think that's where we heard a lot of teachers say, hey, like, you guys really need a curriculum planner. And I secretly, deep down inside, knew that we needed a curriculum planner, but also I'm biased and I work at Kiddom, so I can't really bring that to the team, and that's not good design. So after we had enough people request this, we started thinking about, okay, so how do we build a curriculum planner inside Kiddom? And I'm proud to announce in a couple of weeks, we're going to be ready to release our new curriculum planner for all teachers.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That is good.
Curriculum planning, I agree. That's the thing that keeps people with a vision. I mean, it just like gives a person that sense of mission and vision, and it lets the imagination fly. And thinking back to what you want to accomplish and how you need to really get performance at a peak, I think without the vision and the excitement, it's just not going to be possible. So it's very motivating.
Well, thank you. I think curriculum planning is something that's very, very personal, and I think a lot of teachers get excited about it. And sometimes the excitement wears off when they deliver the instruction, because it's still a very, sometimes the delivery can be very teacher-centric. But if you can design curriculum that's personalized, and you can then, sort of sort out assignments based on which student groups you're going to assign them to, then all of a sudden you have everything you need to give the right content to the right students.
That's great. And we are at the end of our time, believe it or not. We'd love to have you back on to give us more feedback later on on how everything's going, what you're doing, and how it's evolving, because it sounds like a really fun project. And, one thing I like about what you said is you were an investment banker, and now you're investing in something a little bit different.
Yeah, it was a terrible decision in my life.
That's cool. That's really cool. Wasn't actually the Khan Academy guy also an investment banker?
He was.
He was. Yeah, that's interesting. You investment bankers, I don't know. This is good. This is great, though, because you're investing where it really counts, probably.
Yeah, I hope so. And I look forward to feedback from all your viewers as well. Please don't hesitate to use our chat box and chat us in the middle of the night. We're around.
That's great. And if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? We'll put your links on the show notes, but what's a good way to get a hold of you? Yeah,
so you can go to kiddom.co, or you can, hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter handle is yo_Mista, because that's what my kids used to call me.
That sounds great.
That's really great.
Well, thank you much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And if you're watching, please subscribe to the show, but better yet, go see Kiddom. Take a look at what they're doing and join in the fun, because it sounds like a great project and venture. We'll see you next week and next week we have Bob Berg on from, Bob Berg, he's a very well-known writer, The Go-Giver, and more. We'll see you next week. Have a good one, everyone. Bye, Susan.
Thank you, Abbas.
Bye,
Great
Abbas.
job.
Thank you.
Thanks.